Enjoy this episode of The Sleep Story. I make these videos so that everyone can relax and have a good night's rest. There is a particular kind of evening that belongs only to harbor towns, the kind where the last of the daylight has gone, but the lamps have not yet taken over completely, and everything exists for a few minutes in a soft, in-between glow that makes the world look like a memory of itself. That is the kind of evening it is in Varathmora when Saravel begins to pack. Her apartment is small and full of glass. The shelves along the walls hold dozens of vessels, little pieces of ash glass in different shapes and sizes, each one sealed with dark wax, each one labeled in her careful, unhurried handwriting. A name, a date, sometimes a place. The vessels catch the lamplight and hold it, turning it a warmer color than it actually is, so that the whole room seems to glow from the inside like the inside of a lantern. She has lived here for 30 years, and she still notices the light every evening and feels something quiet and good about it. She moves around the room without hurrying. She is not a woman who hurries. She fills a small clay cup with water from the pot on the stone and adds a pinch of mineral salt and a pinch of dried siraval herb, and she waits while it steeps and turns the color of pale amber, and she drinks it, standing by the window looking out at the harbor, where the boats sit dark and still on the water. The tea tastes like clean stone and something faintly green. She has made it this way for 40 years. It tastes, she has always thought, like being ready. Her travel coat is on the hook by the door. Copper brown wool, worn down to something softer than wool usually gets, with pockets deep enough to hold everything she might need, and a collar that folds up against the cold when the bridges are crossed at night. She has had it for a very long time. It fits her the way only old things fit. Not perfectly, exactly, but completely the way the coat has simply learned the shape of her and given up trying to be anything else. She puts it on. She straightens the collar. Then she looks at the hook beside the door. There is only one vessel on this hook. It is smaller than most of the ones on the shelves, no bigger than her closed fist, made of the same pale ash glass, but with a different quality to it, denser, somehow, more present. The wax seal is black. The label, in her handwriting, says only a name and a date, 3 years past. She does not say the name aloud. She reaches up and lifts the vessel down from the hook and holds it in both hands. It is warm, not warm the way glass gets when it sits near a fire. Warm in a different way, from the inside, slowly, steadily, as if something inside it is very gently alive. She has held this vessel so many times over 3 years that she sometimes thinks she has forgotten what it feels like. Then she picks it up again and realizes she has not forgotten at all. She checks the seal. It is intact. She has checked it many times before, and it is always intact. She checks it again anyway, running her thumb along the edge of the wax, feeling for any crack or softness. There is none. There never is. She puts the vessel carefully into the left interior pocket of her coat, where it sits against her ribs, and she feels its warmth spread slowly through the old wool like a small, steady heartbeat. She picks up her travel bag. She turns off the lamp. She locks the door behind her and walks down the narrow stone steps to the street below, and the evening air comes in from the harbor, carrying the smell of mineral salt and cold water, and, very faintly, the sweetness of something warm and spiced from one of the food stalls further down the lane. Her footsteps are quiet on the old stone. A cat on a windowsill watches her pass with the particular calm of an animal that has decided nothing is interesting enough to move for. She does not mind. She is not in a hurry. The streets of Varathmora at this hour are lamplit and slow. People are moving toward home rather than away from it. Voices drift from open windows, the low sound of conversation, the clink of a cup, a child being called in from somewhere further along. Saravel walks through it all the way she always does, taking in the small details the way other people take in air. the particular color of light in a doorway, the sound of water running somewhere underground, the feel of the uneven stone under her shoes. She has walked this route to the station many times. She is in no hurry. She notices everything. The station opens up ahead of her at the end of the street, and even now, after so many years, she feels something lift a little when she sees it. It is a beautiful building, volcanic stone, dark and slightly rough, fitted together with the kind of care that means it will still be standing long after everyone who built it is gone. The arches over the entrance are copper, old enough to have gone green at the edges, but still holding their shape, and the panels of amber glass set into the ceiling above the platform glow with the warm light of the lamps inside. She can smell the steam from here, mineral and faintly hot, the particular smell of the thermal engine warming up, which is one of her favorite smells in the world and which she has never successfully explained to anyone who has not smelled it themselves. Near the entrance, a vendor's cart is doing quiet business in emberplum little glazed fruits on wooden sticks, warm and sweet-smelling, sending up thin threads of steam in the cool evening air. A child is pulling her father toward the cart with the focused determination of someone who has identified a clear priority. The father is pretending to resist and doing a poor job of it. Saravel almost smiles. She walks through the arch and onto the platform. The night train is already there, waiting. It is long and dark, made of the same volcanic stone and copper as the station, built to last and clearly lasting, the kind of machine that looks like it was made to do this one thing and has never regretted it. The thermal pistons along its side are already breathing, slow and deep, a sound like something large and content, in and out, in and out, in and out, just at the edge of what you would call a sound. She feels it as much as she hears it. It settles into her chest like something familiar coming home. A few other passengers are moving along the platform in the warm amber light. A family with 2 small children. The younger one already asleep against a parent's shoulder with the total commitment of a small person who has simply stopped being awake and made it everyone else's problem to carry them. 2 trade workers in good coats comparing notes from identical sample cases, talking in low, efficient voices about something neither of them seems particularly excited about. And further down the platform, sitting alone on a bench near the last carriage, a young person with the particular look of someone who has arrived early, not because they are eager, but because sitting here is better than sitting wherever they came from. She is looking at her hands. She does not look up. Saravel notices her in the way she notices everything, gently, without making it into anything yet. Then Orvith appears at the side of the locomotive, and everything becomes immediately warmer. He is a broad, cheerful man in a conductor's coat, the color of aged copper, with a face that seems to have settled permanently into an expression of mild delight at the existence of thermal gauges. He is holding a small reading instrument up to one of the pressure points on the engine's side, with the focus of a person who genuinely cares about this number. And, when he sees Saravel coming down the platform, he lowers the instrument and raises one hand in greeting, and he is already smiling before she is close enough to see it properly. "Third carriage, left side," he says, when she reaches him. "I checked it myself this afternoon. The seat cover is not as worn as the others. I have been meaning to put in the request. The worn ones are better," she says. "That is what you always say, because it is always true." He laughs, which is a comfortable sound, and he takes a moment to look at her properly, with the ease of someone who has known a person long enough to not need to be polite about it. "Long journey tonight," he says. "All the way out." "All the way out?" She agrees. He nods once, the way people nod when they understand that something is significant and have decided not to make a fuss about it. "I will bring tea around after the first bridge," he says. "The good kind, not the station kind." She thanks him and boards the train. The third carriage is lit with amber lamps turned low, and it is warm and quiet, and it smells of old wool and clean stone, and the faint sweetness of the thermal system's breath. She finds her seat without looking for it. Left side window, the one where the seat has worn down just slightly at the back from years of people who needed to lean. She sets her bag in the rack above and sits down and looks out the window at the platform where Orvith has already returned to his gauges. The lamp above her seat is the color of old honey. She puts her hands in her lap. After a moment, almost without deciding to, she reaches into her interior pocket and takes out the vessel and holds it in both hands the way she always does. And the warmth of it moves through her palms and up into her wrists, slow and steady and very quiet. The train begins to move. Vareth Mora slides past the window, the station arch, the amber glass panels, the end of the platform, and then the buildings fall away, and the dark sea opens up on both sides as the train climbs onto the first bridge, the long obsidian and copper arch that carries the track out over the warm black water. The wind presses against the window. The thermal pistons breathe. The lamps hold steady. Far below, in the deep water, something moves. It is large and slow, and its light is pale blue with amber at the edges, turning in long, unhurried spirals as it drifts in the opposite direction from the train. A thurivi, she watches it through the glass, her hands still around the warm vessel, until the creature's light grows smaller and softer and finally disappears into the dark below. She closes her eyes. The train breathes on. The train slows as it comes into Velrath. It doesn't stop quickly the way a clock stops, all at once with a click. It slows the way a breath slows. Gradually, the thermal pistons easing their rhythm from something steady and walking to something more like pausing, like standing still in a warm room and just breathing for a moment. You can feel it in the floor beneath Saravel's feet. You can feel it in the amber lamp above her, which sways just slightly and then is still. Velrath at this hour is mostly dark, a few lights in the dock buildings. A rope lantern hanging outside a fisherman's door, swinging gently in the salt air. There are 3 people on the platform. A man with a crate, a woman holding a sleeping child against her shoulder, and nobody else. The kind of stop that happens quietly and is forgotten by morning. And that is fine, because that is exactly what it is meant to be. Saravel watches through the window. She has always loved the small stops. She loves the way a platform looks when almost no one is on it. All that empty stone and lamplight. All that patience built into a structure just in case someone needs it tonight. She holds Dava's vessel in her lap. The ash glass is warm. The way it always is, a gentle, steady warmth that sits against her palms like something breathing slowly. She is not thinking about Dava. She is watching the dock lights on the water and thinking about nothing in particular, which is something she has become very good at. Outside, she can see Orvith on the platform. He is a man who moves comfortably, not quickly, not slowly, just comfortably. The way someone moves when they have done the same good work for many years and their body has learned to trust it. He helps the woman with the sleeping child onto the train first, then the man with the crate. Then he pauses. There is a bird on the roof of the station. Even from here, through the dark and the soft glow of the platform lamps, you can see the particular stillness of a gloam heron, the way it holds itself like something that decided a long time ago that patience was not a problem to solve, but simply a way of being. It is large and pale, with that characteristic silver gray at the tips of its wings, and there is something copper-colored on its leg. A cylinder, a message. Orvith looks up at it. The heron looks down at him. There is a moment between them that is almost polite. Then Orvith reaches up. He is tall enough, just barely, and unclips the cylinder from the heron's leg, and the heron shifts its weight once and goes back to being perfectly still. Saravel watches Orvith open the cylinder on the platform. She sees him read the note. She sees his face do something she cannot quite name from this distance, not alarm, not quite worry. Something more like the face a person makes when they have been handed a problem they did not ask for and are now deciding, quietly, how to carry it. He tucks the note into his coat pocket. He pats the Heron station post twice, the way you might pat a doorframe when leaving a room, and boards the train. The tea arrives a few minutes after Vel Wrath falls behind them. Mineral salt blend, steeped just long enough, with a thin slice of dried ember plum laid across the rim of the cup. Saravel has not asked for it. She never has to. On the night train. Orvith has been running this route for 11 years, and Saravel has been making this trip twice each cooling season for most of that time. He sets the cup down in front of her, and then, instead of leaving, he sits. This is also something he does. Not always, not intrusively, just sometimes, on the quiet nights, when the train is moving well and his passengers are settled and he has a few minutes that belong to him. The second bridge sounds different this year, he says. It is not a complaint. It is the kind of observation that is really just an invitation to talk. Saravel wraps both hands around the cup. The tea is warm. The vessel in her lap is warm, and the amber lamp above them is at its lowest setting, casting everything in that particular soft gold that makes a face look gentle whether it means to or not. Different how? She asks. Lower, Orvith says, like it's thinking about something. Saravel considers this. Bridges do that? She says. The metal contracts in the cooling season, gets quieter and more serious. Orvith smiles, like people. Like people. They sit with that for a moment. Outside, the dark water moves past, and somewhere far out in it, very deep, there is the first faint trace of bioluminescent light, pale blue with just the warmest edge of amber, barely visible, slow and drifting. Thuravai, not close enough to see clearly. Just close enough to know they are there, going about whatever ancient, unhurried business they have been about for longer than the bridges have existed. Orvith mentions the Herons, a family of them, 4 adults and what was apparently a very confident set of young ones, have begun building a nest in the copper pylons of the 4th bridge. The maintenance crew found it last week. The nest is already quite large. The Herons are, by all accounts, deeply committed to it and not interested in feedback. They can't remove it, Saravel says. They cannot remove it. Orvith agrees, with the tone of a man who finds this privately delightful. The bridgemaster filed a report to the conclave. The conclave has, so far, not replied. The conclave has other things on its mind. Orvith's expression shifts, just slightly. Something behind his eyes becomes a little more careful. But he doesn't say what he is thinking, not yet. Instead, he glances toward the second carriage, and his voice, when he speaks again, is gentler. The young woman back there, he says. Velhari traveler. She boarded at the main port, and she hasn't moved since. Hasn't eaten. I offered her tea, and she thanked me very properly, and didn't take it. Saravel has already noticed her. She noticed her the moment she boarded. The way Saravel notices everyone, not intrusively, just as a fact. The way you notice where all the doors are in a room without deciding to. She looks like someone rehearsing. Saravel says, a performance? No. Not a performance. An explanation. Saravel looks down at her tea. Someone getting ready to say something difficult to someone who might not want to hear it. Orvith is quiet for a moment. His instinct, which is a very good instinct in the right circumstances, is to go and help. You can see it in him. The gentle readiness of it. Should I check on her? Saravel shakes her head. Slowly. Give her a little longer. Some things need to sit before they're ready. Orvith nods. He trusts her on this. He trusts her on most things. Actually, in the quiet way that people who have known each other on trains for 11 years learn to trust each other, not with everything, but with the things that matter on a night like this. He goes back to his work. The train moves on. Saravel is alone with the amber light and the sound of the pistons and the warm cup between her palms and the warmer vessel in her lap. And for a moment she is very still. She thinks about what she just said. Some things need to sit before they're ready. She thinks about that very carefully for just a moment. And then, with the particular practiced ease of 60 years of managing herself, she puts it down. She looks out the window. She drinks her tea. Thresh Hollow is bigger than Velrath. There is a real harbor here, with boats that have names painted on them in careful letters, and a conclave meeting hall on the hill above the dock, square and stone and lit from inside, even at this hour, because conclave halls are almost always lit from inside at this hour. Something is always being decided somewhere. The platform is longer here. There are more lamps, and standing at the far end of it, with one small bag and the upright bearing of someone who is used to being right, and used to it not mattering, is Councillor Pethrin of Sullen Keth. He boards without ceremony. He does not look around at the train the way new passengers do, noticing the lamp fittings or the quality of the seats. He walks through the first carriage, and then through the second, and he does not stop until he finds Saravel. He sits across from her without asking. They look at each other. The lamp sways once, settles. Saravel knows him the way you know people in a small civilization where the important decisions keep being made by the same few dozen faces. She has seen him in conclave chambers. She has heard him speak. He is careful, and he is honest, and he has a particular quality that she respects even when she disagrees with it, which is that he genuinely believes what he says. He begins to talk. He is not dramatic about it. That is not his way. He lays it out the way you lay out a map. Here is this, here is this. Here is how they connect. The shifting vent below the deep channel. The geological survey from a woman named Veth, whose work Saravel knows and regards highly. The pattern that matches, almost exactly, the pattern that preceded the East Bridge failure on Sullen Keth 17 years ago. The conclave vote, which he has lost twice now. The fact that the bridge the night train crosses after this stop, the long one, the deep channel crossing, sits directly above the anomaly in Veth's report. He is not telling her it will fall. He is telling her that the earth is shifting and no one is listening. And he is telling her, though he does not say this part directly, that if she, Saravel, an ashkeeper who has spent 60 years teaching people that the slow things deserve to be heard, if she continues on this train tonight, then he has nothing left to argue with, because she is the argument. Saravel listens to all of it. She does not interrupt. She does not reassure him. She simply listens with the full attention she gives everything, which is the particular gift of someone who has spent a lifetime knowing that most people, when they are talking, are saying something underneath what they are saying. When he finishes, she asks, "What does Veth say the probability of immediate danger is?" Pethrin's jaw tightens, just slightly. Veth does not use those words. She says the pattern is unusual. She says the earth should be consulted. That is not the same as danger tonight. We do not know that. Saravel looks at him for a long moment. Outside the window, the train is slowing. Thresh Hollow is falling behind them. Ahead, in the dark, the deep channel is waiting, wide and still and very far down. "I know," she says, very quietly, "and I am going anyway." The silence between them is warm and uncomfortable in equal parts. Pethrin does not move. He does not argue. He sits with what she has said, and the expression on his face is the expression of someone who has not given up, but who does not, right now, have another move. The thermal pistons ease their rhythm as the locomotive begins its careful turn toward the bridge. The sound changes, lower. steadier, more deliberate. Something about the night feels closer. And then there is a voice from the doorway. Lissel is standing there, the young Velhari woman, who has not moved since boarding, who has been sitting in the second carriage rehearsing an explanation that was not a performance. She is standing in the doorway between the carriages, and her face is very still in the way that Velhari faces often are. That particular stillness that is not coldness, but is something more like a person holding a very full cup, very carefully. She looks at Pethrin. Her voice, when she speaks, is low and careful. I have a message for the conclave, from Veth. She pauses. I am not supposed to open it, but I think you should know it exists. The lamp above them is steady and gold. Everyone is looking at her, and the night train moves out over the deep channel, and below them, in the dark water, the Thurevi drift in their slow, ancient circles, pale blue and amber lit, going about their business as they always have, witnessing everything and saying nothing, the way some things do. The train breathes on through the dark. You watch Saravel from somewhere close, sitting across from her in the warm amber light, or perhaps you are her, settled into the gentle rocking of the carriage, the vessel warm between your palms. Outside, there is nothing but black water and the sky scattered with cold, bright stars, and the sound of the thermal pistons moving in their slow, steady way, in and out like something sleeping and content. Pethrin has stopped arguing, not because he lost, exactly, but because the argument ran out of places to go on a train crossing 40 minutes of open water. He sits with his hands folded on the table between the seats, and he looks out the window, and his face in the amber light is softer than it was on the platform. Still certain of things. Still a man who believes the conclave is making a mistake, but quieter about it now. The dark water has a way of doing that. Lissel sits across from him, her back very straight in the way of someone who has been trained to hold themselves carefully, but her hands wrapped around a small tin cup of something hot that Orvith brought through before returning to the locomotive. She is young, early 20s at most, and she has the particular look of someone trying very hard not to let anyone see that this is the farthest from home she has ever been. She is the one who speaks first. She says her name again, more fully this time, Lissel Varashen, which tells you she was born on Selvara, the small middle island, and apprenticed out at 16 to the deep tender station at the third channel marker. She has spent the last 2 years learning to read the vent patterns, the thermal shifts, the small, slow changes in the deep water that most people never think about. Her teacher was Veth. She says this name, the way people say the names of teachers they love, simply, without decoration, the way you would say the sun or the sea. Veth sent her on this trip herself, wrote out the instructions in Veth's careful handwriting and pressed the sealed case into Lissel's hands and said, "The representative at the outermost island has been receiving my reports by Heron for 6 months. He is not listening. Go and put it in his hands and stand there while he reads it, and do not leave until you have seen his face change." Lissel smiles a little, telling this. She says, Veth has never met a Heron she fully trusted. Pethrin leans forward when she mentions the report. He asks to see it. His voice is not unkind, but it is urgent, the voice of a man who has been making the same argument for 2 weeks and keeps finding new doors closed to him. Lissel says it is sealed. She says it plainly, without apology. Pethrin sets his hands flat on the table. He says, and you can hear the real frustration in it, that what she is carrying might be the strongest argument he has had access to in this entire debate, and that she is protecting a wax seal while riding the very bridge the report is concerned with. And does she not find something strange about that? Lissel thinks about this for a long moment. She does not rush to answer. She looks down at the case in her lap, flat and smooth, dark with the particular color of Velhari ash glass, sealed with deep blue wax pressed into the shape of a small spiral. Then she looks up. She says, Veth told me to give it to the representative, not to anyone else first. If I give it to you instead, I am deciding that I know better than my instructions. And I do not know you well enough to decide that yet. Pethrin opens his mouth, closes it. Lissel turns to Saravel. She says, "But you read memories. You read what things carry. Can you tell me if this is urgent? Not what it says. Just whether it feels like something that cannot wait." Saravel looks at the sealed case for a moment. Then she reaches out slowly and takes it, both hands the way she holds all things carefully, without rushing. She closes her eyes. You watch her go still. It is not the stillness of someone who has fallen asleep or checked out. It is the stillness of someone listening to something very quiet in a room full of noise. Her breathing slows. Her face softens slightly at the corners, around the eyes, around the mouth, and she holds the case, and she listens to whatever it is she hears when she does this. After a moment, she opens her eyes. She looks tired in a small way, the way a single deep breath can leave you tired, if you really mean it. She says there is urgency in it, and there is also care. Whoever made this was not afraid. They were thorough. And those are not the same feeling. But Pethrin says, "What does that mean for what I need to know?" Saravel says, "It means Veth does not think the bridge will fall tonight. She thinks the situation needs serious attention over the coming season. That is a different kind of warning than the one you have been making in the conclave." Pethrin sits back. He is quiet for a moment. Then, and you can see what it costs him. Not much, but something, he says, that changes the shape of my argument somewhat. Saravel looks at him with something that is almost a smile. She says, "You can still be right that the conclave should be listening more carefully. You may just not need to stop this train tonight to make that point." He does not answer, but he nods, once, slowly, and looks back out the window. And then Orvith's voice comes through the open door from the locomotive, easy and warm, not alarmed at all, just noting the way Orvith notes most things, as if the world is generally a pleasant place and information is best delivered without drama, that they are passing the midpoint of the bridge now, and the thermal gauges are reading normally, and that there are several very large Thurivae visible about 300 meters to the east, doing what he calls their slow spinning thing, which he has personally always found extremely calming. Lissel laughs. It is a real laugh, soft, surprised, the kind that comes out when you have been holding something tight for too long and something small finally loosens it. She puts one hand over her mouth and then lowers it, and she is smiling, and the smile reaches her eyes, and she looks suddenly younger and less like someone trying to hold herself correctly. Pethrin smiles despite himself, just at the corner of his mouth, just for a moment. But there, Saravel turns to the window, and after a moment, you have to look for them. They are far out in the deep. You see them, vast and slow and pale blue, spinning in great lazy circles far below the surface of the water, the Thurivae. Each one longer than the train itself, longer maybe than 3 trains, moving through the dark water with an ease that suggests they have never once worried about anything in their entire ancient lives. The light they give off is soft, blue at the center, with an amber warmth at the edges, and it pulses very gently as they turn, like a breath, like a heartbeat, like something that has been going on long before this bridge was built and will go on long after. You watch them through the glass, and the train breathes its slow rhythm, and nobody says anything for a while. The world is very large, out there, and very calm. It is Lissel who breaks the silence, and she does it gently, the way you ask a question when you are genuinely curious and not trying to make a point. She has been looking at the vessel in Saravel's hands, the one Saravel set back in her lap after returning Lissel's sealed case. The ash-glass one, warm and amber gold, the one she has not put down since she boarded. She says, "What are you taking to the outermost island?" Saravel does not answer right away. The lamplight is very steady and very warm. The pistons breathe outside. The Thurevi are still turning in their slow, unconcerned way far below, and the stars above are bright and cold and very numerous. Eventually, Saravel says, "I am bringing a message from someone who cannot bring it themselves." Lissel nods. She understands this. It is not so different from what she is doing. Pithrin is watching Saravel now with his quiet, perceptive eyes. He says, and his voice is gentle in a way it was not an hour ago on the platform, "How long have you been carrying it?" Saravel says, 3 years. Nobody says anything. She looks down at the vessel. Her thumb moves across the surface of it, very slowly. The same small motion she has made many times, without seeming to notice. She says, "I kept finding reasons to wait. The season was wrong. The family receiving it was traveling. There was a council consultation I could not leave. There was always something." She pauses. "The train moves through the dark," she says, more quietly. "And there was the fact that once I deliver it, I am done with this particular reason to think about her. The light is warm and still. The water is dark and vast beneath them." And Saravel sits with the vessel between her hands, and her face is very calm. The face of someone who is used to keeping things calm, but something around her eyes is different now. Something that was held shut has come slightly open, the way a door that has been sealed for a long time shifts just a little in the frame when the air outside changes. Nobody rushes to speak. Nobody fills the space with something easier. Lissel holds her tin cup in both hands and waits. Pethrin looks at the table and waits. The train gives them the silence and the amber light and the sound of the pistons breathing steadily in the dark, and they let it be what it is. Then Orvith's voice comes back through the open door, warm as always, practical as always, perfectly timed in the way that people who take care of things often are. He says the third island stop is about 20 minutes out. He says the name of it the way a person says the name of a place they love, Salvara, small and round and tucked between 2 bigger islands like something that chose its location carefully. He says they will stop to take on water and some late cargo, and that the air at this time of year is warm and mineral sharp and smells, and here he pauses, like something very close to warm bread, though he has spent years trying to find the source of the bread smell and has not managed it yet. Saravel smiles. A real smile this time. Small and dry and fond. She says she has traveled this route 40 or 50 times and has never solved it either. Orvith says, cheerfully, that it is one of the great mysteries of the route. His voice carries the easy pleasure of someone who has made peace with not knowing everything and found the not knowing to be good company. The carriage is different now, not lighter. Exactly. The weight is still there. Lissel's sealed report. Pethrin's careful worry. Saravel's 3 years of reasons, but it has settled into something softer, the way a hard thing feels different when you are warm and dry and no longer sitting with it alone. At Selvara, you step out. The platform is small and wooden, and the boards are warm under your feet, even this late, still holding the heat of the day. The air hits you the moment the train door opens, mineral and salt and something deep and volcanic underneath, and then, yes, rising through all of it, faint and completely inexplicable and entirely real, the smell of bread. Warm bread, as if somewhere nearby someone has just taken a loaf from an oven, though there is no oven in sight, no bakehouse, no lights in the small dark buildings behind the platform. Nothing to explain it. Lissel breathes it in, and her whole face changes. She looks up. Above the platform, above the small island, above everything, the sky is full of stars. Not the polite scattering of stars you see from cities or from anywhere with lights. These are stars the way stars are supposed to be, covering everything from one edge of the dark to the other. more of them than you can begin to count, packed so thick in places they look less like separate lights and more like something spilled. Lissel says, quietly, that she had forgotten. She was trained to look down. Veth always said, the answers are below, in the deep water, in the vent patterns, in the small changes. You can only see if you're looking at the right thing closely enough. And she believes that, she does. But sometimes, Lissel says, you need to see the whole sky just to remember how much room there is for things to be okay. Saravel stands beside her and looks up and says yes, one word, but she means it all the way through. Pithran stands a little apart from them, closer to the edge of the platform, looking out at the water. You can see him from where you are, this careful, serious man who came onto this train convinced he was right, and not wrong about that, but perhaps wrong about what being right required of him tonight. He is not giving up. He is not collapsing into something easier. He is doing the harder thing, making room, slowly and honestly, for the idea that careful and certain are not always the same, and that being the person who sees the danger does not always mean being the person who has to stop everything right now. It is a quiet kind of growing. It does not announce itself. Orvith finishes the water loading and calls them back aboard. His voice easy and familiar, the voice of someone who has made this call hundreds of times and finds it no less pleasant for that. They climb back on. The door closes. The lamp is where they left it, amber and low and steady, and the seats hold the warmth of their shapes, and the tin cup is still on the small table and is still faintly warm. The train moves back onto the rail with a sound that is by now simply the sound of moving forward, of being on the way, of the next place coming in its own time. The thermal pistons settle into their rhythm, slow, full, steady, and the windows show dark water and bright stars and the occasional far pale glow of something ancient and enormous going about its business far below. One more island, then the outermost one. They are most of the way there now. The night is deep. The lamp is warm. The three of them settle back into their seats, and the story breathes, and the pace of it slows without anyone deciding it should, the way all things slow when they are close to being what they were always meant to become. You close your eyes for just a moment. The pistons breathe. The train carries you on. The water outside the windows is glowing, not brightly, not the way a lamp glows, or a fire. More the way something glows when it has been warm for a very long time, and the warmth has nowhere left to go. So it simply rises, slowly, through the dark. The shallow basin between the fifth island and Velmorachet sits over a broad shelf of heat beneath the seafloor, and on clear nights like this one, the mineral water catches that heat and holds it and gives it back as light, a pale, amber-tinted shimmer, slow and steady, like the sea itself is breathing out. You watch it from the window of the carriage and feel something in your chest go very quiet. The other passengers are all asleep. The family with the two children. The little one had finally stopped asking questions and gone under somewhere around the fourth island. Her head tipped sideways against her father's arm, and the trade workers with their wrapped parcels. And the older man who had been reading when the train left Varathmora and had not made it through more than a few pages. All of them sleeping now, breathing slow, their faces soft and easy in the amber lamplight. Only 4 people are still awake in this carriage. Saravel sits with the ash-glass vessel in her lap. She has been holding it so long that she no longer notices the warmth of it the way she did at the start of the journey. It has become like her own hands now, just part of the temperature of things, just part of what is steady and present in the night. Lissel is across from her, watching the water. Pethrin has his elbows on his knees and is looking at the floor, not in the way of someone unhappy, but in the way of someone who has run out of things to argue and found, to his own surprise, that the quiet is not so bad. Nobody is talking. The thermal pistons move their long, slow rhythm beneath the floor of the carriage, that deep, even sound, in and out, like the train is simply breathing along with everyone else. Then Orvith comes back from the locomotive. He moves through the door at the far end of the carriage and walks the aisle the way he always does, carefully, without hurry, with the particular ease of someone who has done this walk 1,000 times and still pays attention to it. He is carrying a teapot in one hand and 4 cups looped through the fingers of the other, and he sets them down on the small fold-out table between the seats without being asked and pours without ceremony, as if this was always the plan. He glances at the vessel in Saravel's hands, just a glance. Then he looks away, out the window, at the glowing water. The tea is hot. You wrap your hands around the cup and feel the warmth of it alongside the warmth of everything else. For a while, no one speaks. Then Lissel says, softly, "I knew someone who carried something for a long time. Not the way you carry things, not professionally, personally. My mother. She was carrying a memory for her sister, who had died. She never talked about it, she just held it. And one day, several years later, I came and found her sitting in the water." She pauses. She is watching the sea outside, her voice low and even. "The Velhari do this sometimes," she says. "Sit very still in shallow water. It is what we do when we need to be with something we cannot say." I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "Nothing is wrong." She said, "I was just finally ready." The carriage is quiet for a moment. Lissel looks at Saravel. She says, "I am not pushing you anywhere. I am just telling you what I remember." Saravel looks at her. She does not say anything, but something in her face shifts, just slightly, a kind of recognition, small and careful. The way a window opens, just a crack to let in the air. Then Pithrin speaks. He says, slowly, "I knew Dava." Everyone looks at him. He sits up a little. He says, "She came to Sullen Keth twice, for consultation work. A family dispute, a property that had burned, a long time ago, and the family had been fighting about what it meant ever since. She sat with that fire for 6 hours. When she came out, she had untangled something they had been arguing about for 40 years. He pauses. He looks at his hands. He says, "I did not hear that she had died until a full year after the fact. I am sorry I did not know sooner." He is quiet for a moment. Then, more carefully, "I think I understand a little better now why you did not step off the train tonight." Saravel's hands tighten around the vessel. Not much. Just a small tightening. The kind you feel more than see, she says. I told her yes too quickly. Her voice is even and steady. The words come out the way words come out when they have been held somewhere for a very long time, not in a rush, but slowly, like they are not quite sure of the path they need to take. She says, when she asked me to carry her memory to her family, I said yes, because that is what I do. It is my work, and I am good at it, and it felt natural. But she was also my oldest friend. And what I should have done, what I could have done, what I had time to do, was just be with her, not as her ash keeper, not in any professional way, just as her friend, sitting with her at the end. She looks down at the vessel in her lap. She says, I said yes to the task, and by the time the task was done, the afternoon was over. I have been carrying this vessel ever since because while I am carrying it, I still have something to do for her. Once I set it down, I have to figure out what it means to simply miss her, without anything to carry, without anything to do. The words settle into the warm air of the carriage and stay there. Lissel reaches out and places her hand very gently on the back of Saravel's hand. The Velhari do not often touch. When they do, it means something real. Saravel looks down at it. Then she looks back up, out the window, at the soft glow of the water moving past. Orvith says nothing at all. He picks up the teapot and refills Saravel's cup, quietly, without asking. Pethran looks at the glowing water for a long moment. Then he says, "The deep earth holds grief, too." That is not a way of speaking. The ash keepers say fire remembers everything. I believe the same is true of the stone beneath the sea. We are not so different from the things we tend. Saravel looks at him, then she laughs. It is a small, soft laugh, the kind that comes up without warning, and it sounds like relief. She says, "That is almost poetry. Counselor, I did not expect that from you tonight." He says, dryly, "I have my moments." The carriage breathes. Outside, the water glows its pale amber shimmer, slow and wide and warm, and the stars above it are very still. Then Lissel does something quiet. She opens the sealed report she has been carrying since she boarded, not all the way. Not to show Pethran its contents, but enough to check something. She runs her fingers along the inside edge of the ash glass case, slowly, the way Velhari do when they are reading the heat of a thing rather than the words of it. Her face changes. She says, "Veth included something I was not told about." A second document. She reaches inside and holds up a small folded note. It is addressed, in plain handwriting, to Saravel of Varath Mora, Ashkeeper. The carriage goes very still. Lissel holds it out. Saravel takes it. She looks at it for a moment, just the outside of it. The handwriting, her own name written there by someone who knew her well enough to know exactly how to reach her. Then she opens it and reads. Her face does something quiet and complicated that is hard to name, but easy to recognize. It is the face of someone who has just understood something they needed to understand. She reads it aloud. Saravel, I know you are on the train because the station master at Varath Mora told me you had finally booked passage. I have been watching for your name on the manifest for 3 years. The family on Vel Morachet does not know the exact contents of what you are carrying. What I know, because Dava told me, near the end, when I was her deep tender, and she sat with me in the water the way we share things too heavy to carry alone, is that the memory she asked you to carry is not only a message for her family. It is a message for you. She knew you would not sit still for a direct conversation about grief. She knew you would say yes to a task. She was your oldest friend, and she knew exactly what she was doing. The family is expecting a gift, a memory of their grandmother. Yes, but Dava asked that you read it first, before you deliver it, with a fire of your own. She left something in it for you. She asked me not to tell you until you were close enough to have no excuse not to look. I hope the journey has been good. I hope there are Thurevi out tonight. Veth, the sound of the pistons, the glow of the water. No one speaks for a moment. Saravel sits with the vessel in her hands and the note in her lap and the words still warm in the air between all of them. And she understands, at last, why she spent 3 years finding reasons not to board this train, why she had answered every urgent letter first, finished every other case, taken every other road before this one. She had told herself she was waiting for the right time. She had told herself she was being careful. But some part of her had known, had always known, somewhere below the place where she kept her words, that the vessel was not only carrying Dava's final message for the family, waiting on the outermost island. It was carrying something for her. And she had been afraid to open it, not of the grief, of the gift inside the grief, of the fact that her oldest friend had seen her clearly enough to know that the only way to reach her was to make it a task. She sits with this for a long moment. Then Orvith says, very gently, there is a fire room 2 carriages back. Just a small one, a hearth in the wall, cushions on the floor, a low fire behind a glass grate. We keep it for long routes, for passengers who need a little time with something. He pauses. He says, I can take you there, or I can just tell you where it is." Saravel nods. She does not try to say much. She trusts that these three people, who she has known for only a few hours but who feel tonight like exactly the right people to be in this carriage with her, will understand. She takes the vessel. She stands. She walks, slowly, through the quiet carriages past the sleeping family and the sleeping trade workers and the older man with his book still open in his lap, past all the soft shapes of people resting in the amber lamplight, all the way to the small room at the very back of the train. The fire room is warm and low-ceilinged and private. There is a hearth in the wall, with a steady orange fire behind a glass grate. There are soft cushions on the floor and a copper tile pattern on the wall that catches the firelight and sends it back in small warm pieces. The window at the back of the room looks out at the water falling away behind the train, the whole trail of the journey already traveled, glowing faintly in the dark. Saravel sits down on the cushions. She holds the vessel. She closes her eyes and lets herself go all the way in, the way a real hair-threading goes, not just at the edge of things, but all the way down to where the memory lives and the fire remembers and everything that was true is still true, preserved and warm and waiting. The story stays outside the door. It does not go in with her. Some things are not ours to watch. What Orvith hears, after about 10 minutes, is the quiet sound of someone crying. Not frightened. Not in pain. Just crying the way a river moves when it finally finds the direction it was always going, with relief, and with the deep ease of something that has stopped holding itself back. In the carriage, Lissel sits with her hands in her lap and looks out at the glowing water, and feels something in her chest that is close to gratitude. Pithrin closes his eyes and rests, his face softer than it has been all night, the argument he came here to win already feeling very far away and not very important. The train moves through the warm dark. The pistons breathe. The outermost island is close now. The last stretch before Vel Morachet is very slow. This is the way it was meant to be. The engineer who built this final section of rail was a Velhari woman who believed that arriving somewhere should happen gradually. The way you wake up gently on a good morning rather than being startled out of sleep. So the train moves at barely more than walking pace here, over a low bridge that runs just above the surface of the water, so close to the warmth rising off the ashen deep that you feel it through the floor of the carriage, through the soles of your feet, up through your whole body like something being returned to you. You can see how close the water is. You could reach through the window and touch it. Saravel comes back from the fire room before the bridge begins. She looks different, though not in any big or obvious way. Lighter is the word for it. The way something is lighter when you have been carrying it for a long time and you have finally set it down for a moment, not lost it, just put it somewhere safe. Her eyes are tired and clear in equal measure. She settles back into her seat, and Orvith, without saying anything at all, brings her the last of the tea. Lissel asks, very softly, if she is all right. Saravel wraps both hands around the cup. She says yes. She says she left me a very long memory. It was mostly her laughing. She was always funnier than I remembered when I was away from her. And then the moment I was with her again, I would remember immediately. She is quiet for a second. Then she says, she told me to stop making a ceremony of the grief. She said it the way she always said things, not unkind, just very direct. She said, "You are allowed to just miss me, Saravel. It does not need a title." Lissel smiles, slow and warm. Pethrin, who has been sitting quietly in the way of a person who has put something down himself, says the conclave will hear Veth's full report when we return. I will push for it. I will always push for it, but I will push differently now. Not as an emergency, as a request for proper care over the coming season. Saravel says, that sounds right. Pethryn says, "You should know I did not come on this train to be the villain in your story. Ashkeeper. I came because I was afraid." Saravel says, "I know. Most people who argue loudly are afraid of something they cannot fix any other way." Pethryn looks at her for a moment, and then he laughs, just once, quietly. He says yes. Orvith calls back from the front that they are beginning the final approach. Everyone goes quiet and looks out the windows. The low bridge is something else. The water is right there, warm and still and close, and in the early dark before sunrise it carries that faint amber glow from the thermal shelf below, and the last stars are reflected in the surface, and the train moves through all of it so slowly that it does not feel like traveling at all. It feels like floating, like being carried somewhere by something that knows the way ahead. The island begins to come out of the dark, first as a warmer shadow against the sky, then as the low shapes of hills, and then, as you get closer, the small amber lights of the harbor and the houses, just starting to come on for the first people up in the morning. Velmorachet is small and quiet and a little remote from the rest of the world. And when the train pulls into its tiny station, it smells the way people who love this island say it smells mineral water and salt and something green. The particular smell of the volcanic moss on the northern cliffs, which grows nowhere else and which you could not mistake for anything else once you have known it. The station has one lamp post and a small covered bench. The station keeper comes out rubbing his eyes to receive the train. They get off. Lissel goes to find the conclave representative. She walks steadily, and without rushing. And she holds the report with care, but not with the tight, anxious grip she had when she boarded. Something about the night has reminded her that things carried carefully tend to arrive safely. Pethryn sits on the bench. He looks out at the sea and the growing light, and he seems, for the first time in some hours, like a man who is resting rather than planning. He will send a morning heron to the conclave later. It can wait a few minutes. Orvith has a short layover before the return journey. He comes and stands with Saravel on the platform, and they look out at the harbor together. The way people stand together when they have traveled a long way in the same direction, and there is nothing left to explain. He says, "I have run this route for 22 years, and every so often a night comes along that is not like the others." She says yes. He says, "I never know in advance which night it will be. That used to bother me." "It does not anymore," she says. "No. Me either." She leaves him there and walks into the small town. The family's house is not hard to find. It is the one she was given directions to 3 years ago and has held in her memory all this time without ever letting herself move toward it. A stone house with a copper-bright door and a window box of herbs and a faint light already glowing through the front shutter. Someone is up early. She knocks. A woman answers, perhaps 50, with Dava's eyes and a younger face. A daughter. Maybe. She looks at Saravel. She looks at Saravel's hands, now empty, and at the way Saravel is standing, and she understands immediately what this is. You can see it in her face. Not shock. Not grief torn open fresh, but something quieter. The look of a person receiving something they waited a long time for, and had found their own peace with waiting. She opens the door wider and says, "Simply come in." There is fire, and Saravel steps inside. The door closes behind her, softly. The story does not follow her in. That part belongs to her, and to Dava, and to the family, and to the fire. Outside, the harbor is waking up. The last stars are still holding in the west where the sky is still dark, and in the east it is doing what it does every morning, not sunrise yet. Not quite, but a slow warming from black to deep blue and then to a color that has no real name but that feels, when you see it, like the word beginning. On the platform, Orvith climbs back into the cab. He checks the gauges, all warm, all steady, and takes hold of the controls with the ease of 22 years of the same motion. Lissel comes back. She has delivered the report. She looks like someone who put something down and found her hands feel fine. She asks Orveth if there is still tea. He says always. Pithrin boards. He takes a window seat he has never taken before, the left side, third carriage, and looks out at the harbor and lets it be what it is. The train waits for Saraval. Orveth has decided this without making any show of it, just adjusted the time in his own quiet way. Trains can wait. That is the good thing about being the one who drives. And after a while, the sun is still barely more than an idea at the edge of the sky. Saraval comes back along the harbor road. She walks slowly. Her hands are empty at her sides. Her coat is a little wrinkled from the long night, and her face has the look of someone who has done something they should have done a long time ago and found that it was not as frightening as they had made it, and also somehow more necessary and more beautiful than they had imagined it could be. She boards the train. She takes her seat, third carriage, left side. Window, and she looks out at the harbor as the train begins to move. The low bridge carries them back out over the warm water. Slow as sleeping. The sky is lighter now. The water has turned that soft early morning blue, and the glow from the thermal shelf below is still there if you know to look for it. A faint pale warmth just under the surface. The Thurivae that move through these waters at night are going back down to the deep now, their light going out one by one, like lamps being turned low when the morning comes. Orveth sets the train to its slowest pace. Lissel is asleep in the second carriage, curled small with one hand resting open on the seat beside her. Pithrin watches the sea with the calm of someone who has decided to take things one season at a time. In the third carriage, Saraval rests her head against the window glass. It is warm from the first morning light, just starting to touch it. The thermal pistons make their slow, steady sound, not mechanical, somehow, but breathing, like something very large and very gentle moving through the dark with care. She thinks of Dava laughing. The specific way Dava laughed. Sudden and real and always a little too loud for whatever room she was in. She lets herself think about it without closing it away. It does not feel like loss right now. It feels like something she is allowed to keep. The water moves past. The sky keeps lightening. Slowly, the way the best things do, the train breathes. The water breathes. The sky is pale blue now, and then softer. And then the first real line of warm light at the edge of the horizon. Steady and gentle and just enough. The night train carries its passengers home across the ashen deep, warm and slow, the way the best journeys end, not with a sudden arrival, but with the quiet feeling of having been somewhere real and come back just a little different and found, in the coming light, that the difference is good. The train breathes. You breathe. The water is warm. Let go.